So hello everybody, welcome back to Law Hero. My name is Jen and we talk about all things law related, but a lot of the time we can sometimes venture into some business stuff because of course I'm running my own business, I work for a business and law is a business. So it's only natural that we start to delve a little bit deeper into issues around business, and this will make us better lawyers. You can't have one without the other. You can't have business without law, but you also can't have law without business. So that's why I'm kind of doing a little bit more around business and behavior, because all of these are drivers in our economy. They create profit and we need to be on the inside track. We need to understand where these drivers come from. And that is why today we are talking about the magic of maybe, the all-elusive power that drives us to go to concerts, log into Facebook, be toxic on a group chat. All of these things are linked by the same elusive hormone called dopamine. And it's January, it's that time of year where a lot of people are trying to flush out their dopamine. They're trying to figure out ways they can become more disciplined in order to control their cravings. And just like any other addiction, people can be addicted to dopamine, which is that physiologically feels like that feeling you have when you have chocolate, or you're after winning something, or you give somebody a hug, like when I hug my dog. That feeling, that good feeling, is dopamine, and it's great. It's a bonder. It makes us feel good. We need a certain level of positive chemicals to feel good about ourselves. But in this video I'm going to talk about the dark side of dopamine and the magic of maybe, because it's that maybe that drives us to do certain things, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video. I spent a little while, so firstly I'll tell you where the inspiration from this video came from, and actually I already planned this video back in October, and I remember I was passing TK Maxx and I said to myself, I'll just pop in and see what's there. And I actually had to stop myself in my track. I'm like, why am I going in? I don't need anything. It's TK Maxx, the place is all messy. But it's like, what if I find that designer thing knocked down to like, whatever, 140 euros to 40 euros. What if? And it struck me that it was that what if, that's what pulls me into TK Maxx. It's like, maybe I can find a bargain. There's no guarantee, it's just my dopamine spiked in my body because it's like, oh, an opportunity. I can go and see. I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I can just go and see. And then I thought to myself, what is this called? So then I did the research and I found out it was the magic of maybe, and I found out it was the dopamine making me act. I'm sure all of you figured that out straight away, but for me, I like to look at a more contextual, kind of abstract point of view, how these big brands and how these big like Facebook and all of these like event management companies, how they pull us in and get us to spend our money. That's why we're here today. Most people will have watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix, and you will have heard the analogy of the use of social media being compared to like a cocaine addiction, because obviously cocaine is the dopamine drug. And basically in that Netflix documentary, they compare the use of social media to the same high a gambler gets from slot machines. And a slot machine really is the best example of the magic of maybe, because when you pull down the lever, you don't know what combination of fruits are going to come up. You might get the 3 oranges in a row, you might get the 2 oranges, but it's that constant seeking of dopamine that keeps you putting it. And so yeah, like that's why you have, if you remember like that episode of The Simpsons where Marge was addicted to the slot machines, this is exactly what happened. And so there is an addiction to social media because of the same addictive quality that other dopamine infused activities have. And as we know, these big social media providers have these engineers who they're called like attention engineers. They know, for example, when you hover over things, or when you play certain games, or you look at certain pictures, or you look at certain images, they know what you like, and the whole thing is to keep you on the app, or to keep you in the shop, or to keep you coming back for more. So it's a habit loop. And remember from Charles Duhigg, the habit loop is cue, routine, reward. So the cue here is the magic of maybe. Maybe when I check my phone, there'll be a message there. Maybe there'll be a like there. Maybe there'll be a DM. Maybe there'll be something I haven't seen before. The same works for negative news stories. The magic of maybe spikes our dopamine because we're like, oh, we know something that other people may not know, and it puts us in a situation of superiority. It all plays into that. The problem, however, when you become addicted to any substance, you obviously become dependent on it. And what I have noticed with a lot of people who talk to me is that the addictiveness of social media, time spent on phones, YouTube, or whatever it may be, is coming at the detriment of their work and of their focus. And I don't particularly like Gary Vaynerchuk, but he did say something interesting, which was our generation, so millennials, we have so many distractions that to be great or to be like a leader is quite easy, because most people are so distracted and not able to focus that if you're that one person who's able to focus and able to produce in your friend group or whatever, if you're ahead of the pack, you're going to be very, very special, because everybody else is so engrossed in these addictive habits and behaviors. Now, as I just mentioned, the Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, even he didn't suspect that the behavior that comes from the addiction in social media is so strong that it persists long after the reward is there. And this is the question, because obviously to build a habit you need a cue, routine, and a reward. That means when, like for example, my phone is turned down right now. So the cue is I see my phone. The routine is I flip it over and I check certain apps. The reward is that there is some type of notification there. You'll see on my phone there's never notifications. There's some type of notification there. There's some sort of like external gratitude. Somebody has written to me, somebody's looking for me. So where is the reward? Because sometimes the reward isn't there. And from the research, they're after finding that it's because of that roulette feeling, like you don't know if there's going to be something there or not. That becomes the reward in itself, which is shocking, because that means that we have become conditioned to expect there might be something, but we're okay if there isn't, and we kind of like that uncertainty. And I find that absolutely fascinating, because if you think of it logically, most human beings, the human race, what we crave is certainty. Like we want to know, like, that's my romantic partner, that's my job, that's my status, those are my friends, that's my parents, this is where I live, bam, 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 this is what I do every day. We love routine, we crave routine just like animals crave routine. But what I find fascinating is that the reward can be so uncertain that we get a kick out of that. That is truly dangerous. Like, that's why people stay in toxic relationships, because the mood goes up and down and they actually get accustomed to that fluctuation. It becomes normal. And this is what happens when you become addicted to social media. The reward is the fluctuation. Some days it's good, some days it's bad. I think that's fascinating. Then I read a really interesting scientific article around how that addiction to the fluctuating reward can actually isolate you. And we know this because people are struggling with in real life interactions, not only because of the pandemic, but because there's a loneliness epidemic that has been created by this addiction. And in my work with mental health charities, social media usage is being coined as the biggest deterrent for good mental health in teenagers to young adults, and particularly younger girls are suffering much more because they're more susceptible to that societal norm, the beauty standards and all of that. So the research is patently clear, even without the Facebook whistleblowers, that social media is bad for your mental health. And there is I don't know where the study is, but they showed that the more social media you use, the more likely your mental health will not be good. So in one psychological study performed by Stanford University professor Robert Sapolsky, he trained a monkey to understand that pulling on a lever 10 times will produce food after a small delay. The monkey was notified of a new session each time a signal was turned on. Contrary to his initial hypothesis, the levels of dopamine would increase after work expenditure, i.e. pulling the lever. Dopamine levels actually spiked in response to the signal being turned on. So what they found out is that dopamine is not about pleasure, it's about the anticipation of pleasure. So it's this anticipatory area is what is quite new around this social media thing. But you will have seen in my TK Maxx example, when I was driving past, the anticipation of winning or losing was also there as well. And a lot of the time, like, I've seen anticipatory anxiety when it comes to exams and when it comes to performance, and it's the exact same level of thinking, because when it comes to anticipation around performance, because you're on the cusp of uncertainty, you don't know how you're going to perform. You hope you're going to perform well, but the worst case scenario is you perform badly. And I've been here myself. I just had this at the weekend with a duathlon in Mondello Park. I was having anticipatory anxiety because I didn't know how well I was going to do, and it was in that uncertainty where the anxiety came from. And what you seek to do in that moment is to create certainty. So what you do is you go into the phone because you're like, okay, the reward comes from knowing, is there a notification or not in the notification itself. And this is why people self-sabotage. Like, this is all mind-blowing stuff. So, you know, before an exam, you're like, okay, I kind of know the stuff, and this is the same for any performance. I kind of know the stuff, it could go either way. What a weak character will do, and I say this with all respect because I've done it myself, they will self-sabotage in order to find certainty. So for example, if they're running a race, and I have done this before, when I'm uncertain of the outcome, I don't do it anymore, but I used to do it. I would self-sabotage because I would rather stop running and be the boss of my own destiny than sacrifice my reputation and not knowing how I would do and finish the race with everybody else, but no, it was my fault that I didn't perform. So let me explain that again. And I've seen this with FE1 candidates, they're on the cusp, they're not sure if they're going to pass or not. So rather than go through with the exam and get a result that is external to them, as in the examiner is going to give it to them, or in my race example, the world is going to give it to them, they would rather be in control of their destiny by not doing the exam and not getting the result, because they're getting that dopamine effect of the certainty. They're checking their phone, they're taking the easy option. They're checking their phone and going, okay, now I know there's a notification there, or there's not a notification there. Either way, I'm in control. So it all comes back to control. And I can speak about this candidly because I had a fear of flying, and I know that Like for me, it was that trying to control everything is why I didn't want to fly. And a lot of the time I wouldn't board a flight, because rather than risk myself to the external circumstances, which was outside of my control, I'd rather sabotage the trip and stay in control and be in my comfort zone. And this is the problem with social media. Rather than sit with who we are and be uncertain about our social status, about who checked out our picture, we have to be in control. And this is the problem with humans. And I'm reading a book actually at the moment called The Inside Out Revolution. And in that book, the author says is that you're at a very low level of consciousness when you're trying to control everything. And what he means by that is you don't understand that your inside world is actually a reflection of your outside world. Somebody who's operating on a very high level of consciousness realizes that their thinking is the problem. It's that paradigm through which you see things. Your thinking is the problem. And that's why they call it a paradigm shift when you raise your consciousness. Because if you're somebody who's at the top level of consciousness, you realize that there is no difference between your inside world and your outside world. Like, you create your own reality as you go along, but at the highest level of consciousness, you realize that reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one, just like Einstein said. So with that understanding, if reality is an illusion, and if what I see on my phone is a construct of my thought, and if I equate getting feedback on social media, if I equate that with being accepted by other human beings as having a higher status than I had before I was a member of the social media platform, if you are stuck in that paradigm of thinking, your head is going to reflect that to you. Like, your thoughts are going to reflect that to you, and what you see in the phone is going to be reflected back into your mind as that. It is determinative. It is a means to an end, and that becomes your whole world. And what you do is you limit your focus to just this phone, and you stop looking outward. Like, if you see, I'm going to put up some of them, some of the cartoons that have been made of people on buses and trains, and they're like this because this has become their reality, but they have set this reality up for themselves. That's the saddest thing about this. And I really do pity teenagers who have started life with these boxes, because their level of thinking is only that high. Their consciousness is only that high. They're not even looking around at nature. They're not even observing human relationships, which is the most natural thing to do. Observe your surroundings, observe your environment, because their level of consciousness and their interpretation of reality has become so narrow. I obviously am very passionate about this, because most people talk about anxiety, they talk about depression and loneliness, and all of these mental health issues come from a place of lack, because you are constantly looking externally for validation. Sorry, the camera died. Say what you want about our parents' generation, in that mental health wasn't so much spoken about in their generation. But when I was having this discussion with my mother, I realized that, and also reading this book, and I want to say this as properly as I can, because I do believe it to be true in my experience. Because we are more individualistic now than ever before, That is why mental health has become more of an issue. It doesn't mean that it wasn't there for our parents' generation. The difference with the baby boomers, our parents' generation, was that they, more than we did, saw their experience as a collective human one. I would listen to my mother and she would say, well, everybody goes through times of stress. Everybody goes through times of panic. That same rhetoric, you do not hear that in our generation. It's all about me. I'm going through anxiety. I'm going through depression. And I can say this because I was exactly the same. I thought I was so special and unique in my experience. And it is my belief that the problems that our parents' generation had in terms of, school teachers, pedophiles, the priests, the nuns, all of that, that was really, really bad. But that was a societal circumstance. In terms of their resilience to those external circumstances, I believe they had a far more collective approach. And I know this has gone way off the topic of the magic of maybe, but it is relevant. They had a far more collective approach towards each other. They were far more resilient because they understood that everybody else in the class was being punished. It wasn't just them, and they knew they weren't special because they had a lot more to do at home. They had to help out far more than we had. And I said this to my friend at the weekend. We have the luxury of time to think about ourselves, but actually what it has done, has increased and ramped up our awareness of ourselves to the point where we question everything about ourselves and we don't realize that we're having a human experience that is collective to us all. And therefore I believe social media has come at a really bad time because people are already separated individually in their own heads. And social media even narrows their focus even more. And that is why I believe social media is thriving. It's at the perfect point in our history. We've had boomers who've come from a post-World War parentage. They wanted the world for their millennial children. Now the millennials are highly individualistic, quite entitled, very much all about it's my journey. I'm going to quit this job if it doesn't suit my agenda. I'm not going to have children because it's my choice. Everything is me, 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 me. And which is fine. You make your choices, but in the sense of existentialism, you bear the responsibility of your choices as well. And the responsibility of using a highly addictive substance means you may suffer time, you may suffer productivity, and all in all, your wisdom, your creativity, and what you have to give to the world remains dormant. So that is my 2 cents on the magic of maybe and the social media epidemic. I myself am part of the problem. I'm keenly aware of that, but I also think that it is time that we talk about it because it certainly is holding a lot of people back. And in my experience, the people who come to me are of the age group where it's holding them back, and it's a shame. It's a shame. Social media can be very good, but it can also damage people's potential. I'm going to stop talking now because I've said an awful lot. Thank you very much for listening. If you have done towards the end, I appreciate it very much. This is very much a way to get topics out there and spoken about. See you next one.